Alarms scream through the hull before I even open my eyes. Red light floods the narrow bunk room, and I am on my feet before my mind catches up with my body. 10 years of training does that to a person. You do not think, you move. My name is Cale Farrow, and I am the systems officer of a ship most of the galaxy believes does not exist, crewed by a species most of the galaxy believes is extinct. The alarm is not an attack warning. It is worse. It is a proximity alert, and it means something large has entered the debris field where we have been hiding for 6 months. I pull on my jacket and run down the narrow corridor, my boots echoing against metal that has not been properly repaired in years. Pipes hang loose above my head, patched with tape and prayer. The ship groans around me like an old animal turning in its sleep. This is the last light, and it is, as far as I know, the final human warship still capable of flight. I reach the bridge and find Captain Dara Voss already there, her eyes locked on the main display. She does not turn when I enter. She never does. She has a way of seeing everything without looking away from what matters most. "Report," she says, her voice flat and controlled, the voice of someone who has said this word 1,000 times in worse situations than this one. "Coalition fleet," says Liam Cross from the sensor station, his fingers moving fast over a cracked console. 6 ships, cruiser class. They are not moving toward us. They are holding position at the edge of the field. I feel my chest loosen slightly, but only slightly. 6 coalition cruisers, this close to our hiding place is not nothing. It is a knife held near your throat by someone who has not yet decided to use it. "Why are they here?" Dara asks, though I do not think she expects an answer yet. Liam taps something, and a new window opens on the display. It is a broadcast signal, wide and public, the kind the coalition sends when they want the entire galaxy to hear. My stomach tightens before I even understand why. I have learned to trust that feeling. "They are celebrating," Liam says, and his voice cracks slightly on the word. "It is the 10th anniversary of the silencing." The bridge goes quiet, except for the low hum of failing engines. 10 years since the coalition of aligned species bombed our homeworld into ruin. 10 years since they told the galaxy that humanity had been wiped from existence, a violent, dangerous species finally removed for the safety of everyone else. 10 years since every human who could not hide was killed, and every human who could hide learned to disappear. I was 19 when it happened. I watched my planet burn from the window of an evacuation shuttle, and I have not stopped running since. "Put it on the main screen," Dara says quietly. Liam hesitates, then obeys. The image that fills our bridge is bright and clean, nothing like the burned wreckage of our lives. It shows a grand hall on some coalition capital world, filled with alien dignitaries in fine clothing, raising glasses in a toast. Words scroll beneath the image in a dozen languages, none of them ours. 10 years of peace, a translated voice announces, warm and pleased with itself. 10 years since the last violent species was removed from the galaxy. Let us remember the sacrifice required to protect civilization. I feel something hot rise in my throat. Sacrifice. They speak of murdering an entire species as though it were an act of courage. "Turn it off," I say, and I am surprised by how rough my own voice sounds. Dara does not turn it off. She watches, unmoving, her jaw tight enough that I can see the muscle working beneath her skin. I understand why. She is not watching to torture herself. She is watching because she refuses to look away from the truth of what has been done to us, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. "They believe it," she says finally. "They actually believe we are gone. They will keep believing it," Liam mutters, "as long as we stay quiet." I want to agree with him. For years, I have agreed with him. Silence has kept us alive. Silence has let us slip past patrols, hide in dead systems, raise children, in the dark corners of a galaxy that wants us erased. Silence is the only reason I am standing here at all. But something about watching them celebrate our deaths, glasses raised, smiles wide, makes silence taste different in my mouth today. It tastes like agreement. It tastes like letting them win twice. A soft chime interrupts my thoughts. Liam frowns at his console. "New contact," he says. "Small vessel. Coalition make, but the transponder code does not match any registered ship in this sector." "Could be a scout," Dara says. "Could be nothing. Could be someone looking for us," I say. Dara finally turns from the screen to look at me. Her eyes are the eyes of a woman who has buried more people than she has ever told anyone about. Then we do what we always do, she says. We disappear a little deeper. I nod, though something in me resists the order for the first time in years. I push the feeling down and move to my station, because that is what discipline means. That is what survival has always meant, ever since the sky over my home turned orange and I stopped believing anyone was coming to save us. We power down every non-essential system. Lights dim throughout the ship. Engines that were already running quiet drop to a whisper. I watch the small unknown vessel on my display as it drifts closer to the edge of the debris field, moving slowly, almost carefully, as though it is searching for something rather than hunting it. It is not broadcasting a weapons lock, Liam says after a long, tense minute. It is not doing anything except scanning. Scanning for what? I ask, though I already suspect the answer. The vessel passes within 1,000 kilometers of our position and continues on, oblivious to the fact that it just skimmed past the very thing the entire galaxy believes was destroyed a decade ago. I release a breath I did not know I was holding. It is gone, Liam confirms, moving away from the field. The tension on the bridge eases, but it does not vanish. It never fully vanishes. It simply settles into the walls of the ship, along with everything else we carry. Dara turns back to the anniversary broadcast, still playing silently on the main screen, the toasts and smiles continuing without us. She watches for a long moment before speaking again. 10 years, she says softly, almost to herself. 10 years, and they still think this is over. I do not answer right away. Instead, I think about my daughter, asleep 2 decks below, in a cabin barely large enough for a bed and a chair. A girl who has never seen an open sky, never felt real sunlight on her face, never known a version of humanity that was not hiding. She was born 8 months after the silencing, in the cargo hold of a refugee ship, delivered by candlelight, because the power had failed. She has grown up believing that humanity is a story her parents tell her before sleep, not a people, not a nation, a story. I look at the screen, at the alien faces smiling, over what they believe is our grave, and for the first time in years, the fear that has lived in my chest since I was 19 years old shifts into something else. Something sharper, something that feels dangerously close to purpose. They think this is over, I say quietly, repeating Dara's words back to her. She looks at me, and something passes between us, unspoken but understood. Neither of us says what we are both thinking, not yet. It is too soon, and the weight of what such a thought would mean is too large to speak aloud in a room full of frightened, hopeful people who have survived this long by believing that hiding was the only way. But the thought is there now, planted like a seed in dry ground, waiting for the moment it will finally be given water. The broadcast finally ends, replaced by the quiet static of empty space. Liam powers down the display, and the bridge falls into a dim, watchful silence. Get some rest, Dara tells the crew, though her own eyes stay fixed on the void outside the viewport, on the darkness that has been both our prison and our shelter for 10 long years. Tomorrow, we move again. I nod and turn to leave, but before I do, I glance one last time at the empty screen, where alien hands raised glasses to celebrate our extinction. They do not know we are still out here. They do not know that somewhere in the dark, a girl who has never seen the sun is growing up strong, sharp, and unafraid. They do not know that the silence they mistake for our grave is only the space before we speak again. And soon, I think, as I walk back toward my daughter's cabin, soon the whole galaxy is going to find out exactly how wrong they have been. For now, though, we hide. For now, we wait. For now, silence is armor. But armor is not meant to be worn forever, and somewhere deep inside me, a decision is already beginning to take shape. One that will change everything for every human being left alive in this galaxy. I just do not know it yet. Not fully. Not until the day comes when hiding costs us more than speaking ever could. 3 weeks later, I am kneeling on the floor of a storage bay, elbow deep in a broken filtration unit, when my daughter finds me. "Papa," Mira says, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, the way she does when she wants to seem older than she is. She is 9 years old, with her mother's sharp eyes and my stubborn chin, and she has a way of looking at me that makes me feel like she can see straight through every lie I have ever told to protect her. Liam said we are moving again tonight. We move a lot, I say, not looking up from the wiring in my hands. You know that. I know we have moved 11 times since I could count, she says. I know, because I count. I pause and glance at her. There is no accusation in her voice, only a simple, honest observation, the kind children make, before the world teaches them to soften their words. It hits harder than any argument could. We move to stay safe, I tell her. Are we safe now? I do not have a good answer for that, so I give her the only true thing I can offer. We are alive, I say. That has to be enough for today. She considers this with the seriousness only a child can manage, then sits down beside me on the cold floor and watches me work. For a while, neither of us speaks, and I am grateful for the silence, because it lets me think about the last 3 weeks without having to explain any of it to her. Since the anniversary broadcast, something has shifted through the last light, like a slow current beneath still water. Nobody has said anything out loud, not yet, but I have caught Dara staring longer than usual at old star charts. I have seen Liam quietly cataloging every coalition frequency we have ever intercepted, as though building towards something. I have felt it in myself too, this restlessness that used to be fear and is slowly becoming something else. We are not the only ones left. That is the secret at the center of everything, the truth we protect more carefully than any weapon on this ship. Scattered across a dozen dead systems and hidden asteroid fields are other survivors, other ships, other families who escaped the silencing the same way we did, by disappearing before the coalition finished its count. We do not speak to them often. Every transmission is a risk. But every few months, a coded signal passes between us, buried in noise that looks like nothing more than stellar interference to anyone not listening for it. That night, after Mira is asleep, I make my way to the small communications room, where Dara and Liam are waiting for me. The door hisses shut behind me, and Dara wastes no time. I want your honest opinion, she says, not your careful one. I lean against the wall, arms crossed. About what? About what we do next. Liam pulls up a display, showing a star map dotted with faint markers, each one representing a known human refuge. There are more than I expected. 17, scattered like seeds thrown into darkness, each one small, each one hiding, each one alone. I have been running the numbers, Liam says. If we combined every surviving human ship and colony, we are looking at close to 40,000 people. 40,000. It is such a small number compared to what we once were, and yet it is so much larger than I imagined possible, after 10 years of believing we might be the only ones left. 40,000 people hiding, Dara says, is still 40,000 people hiding. What choice do we have? Liam asks, though his voice lacks conviction, as though he already suspects the answer will not satisfy him. I think of Mira, sitting beside me on the storage bay floor, asking if we are safe, counting the number of times we have run. I think of the toast raised on that alien broadcast, glasses lifted to celebrate our supposed extinction. We could keep hiding forever, I say slowly, and in 50 years, there will be nothing left of who we were. Not because they killed us, but because we let ourselves disappear a little more every single day. Our children will not remember Earth. Their children will not remember they were ever human in any way that means something. We will not be defeated. We will just quietly cease to exist. The room is silent for a long moment. So what are you suggesting? Dara asks, her voice careful, testing the shape of a thought she has clearly been circling herself. I do not know yet, I admit. But I know that hiding has a cost too. We just do not send anyone a bill for it. We just quietly pay it, every single day, in pieces of ourselves we do not get back. Liam exhales slowly and rubs a hand across his face. You are talking about revealing ourselves. I am talking about deciding, I say. Right now, we are not choosing anything. We are just reacting, running, waiting for the day they finally find us. At some point, that is not survival anymore. That is just delay. Dara studies me for a long moment, and I brace myself for her to dismiss the idea, to remind me of everything we stand to lose. Instead, she surprises me. I have been thinking the same thing, she says quietly. I did not want to be the one to say it first. Liam looks between us, clearly uneasy. Even if we wanted to reveal ourselves, How would we even begin? We are one ship. 40,000 people scattered across 17 locations is not an army. It is barely a whisper. A whisper heard by the right ears can still change everything, Dara says. I think of something my mother used to say to me, back before the world ended, back when I was young enough to believe the galaxy was a fair place. She used to say that silence protects you until the day it starts to bury you, and you have to know the difference before it is too late. I did not understand what she meant back then. I understand it now. We do not have to attack anyone, I say, the thought forming clearer as I speak it aloud. We do not have the strength for that, and honestly, I do not think that is what any of us actually want. But we could let them know we are still here, not as a threat, as a fact they cannot ignore. And what happens after that? Liam asks. What happens when they realize we lied to them for 10 years? What happens when they realize their perfect story about wiping us out was never true? I do not know, I admit again. But I know what happens if we do nothing. We keep shrinking. We keep hiding. And eventually, there is nothing left to reveal, because we will have already erased ourselves. Dara is quiet for a long time, staring at the star map, at those 17 scattered points of light representing everything left of us. Finally she speaks, her voice steady in a way that tells me she has already made peace with what she is about to say. This is not a decision I can make alone, she says, not for 40,000 people. If we are going to consider this, every surviving colony needs a voice. Every captain, every elder, every family who has kept us alive this long, deserves to decide their own fate. That will take time, Liam says. Coordinating a vote across 17 hidden locations, using coded signals we cannot risk sending too often, that could take months. Then it takes months, Dara says. We have survived 10 years in the dark. We can survive a little longer while we decide how, or if, we step back into the light. I feel something settle in my chest, not certainty exactly, but the beginning of it, a direction where before there was only drifting. For the first time since the silencing, I do not feel like a person simply trying to outlast the end of everything I loved. I feel like a person beginning to build something again, even if I do not yet know what shape it will take. Over the following weeks, we begin the slow, careful work of reaching out. Liam crafts messages hidden inside patterns of static, designed to look like nothing more than the random noise of dead stars, to anyone not specifically listening for our old signals. Dara spends long hours recording personal messages to send to captains and elders she has known since before the silencing, people who trusted her judgment back when trust was the only currency that still meant anything. I am given the task of speaking to the youngest generation, the children born after the fall, the ones who have never known anything but hiding. It is Dara's idea, and at first I do not understand why, until she explains it to me late one night in the empty mess hall. They are the ones who will inherit whatever we decide, she says. If we choose to stay hidden, it is their future we are shrinking. If we choose to step forward, it is their future we are risking. They deserve to understand what is happening, even if they cannot vote yet themselves. So I begin holding small gatherings in the cargo bay, sitting with children who have grown up believing that Earth is a story, rather than a memory, explaining to them, in the simplest terms I can manage, what their parents are considering. I do not lie to them. I do not soften the danger. But I also do not let them believe that hiding is the only kind of safety that exists. Mira sits in the front every time, watching me with those sharp eyes of hers, absorbing every word. One evening, after a gathering ends and the other children have wandered off, she stays behind, sitting cross-legged on the cold metal floor. Papa, she says, if we do this, if we tell everyone we are still alive, will it be dangerous? Yes, I say honestly. It might be very dangerous. But if we do not do it, then we stay safe, I say, but we also stay hidden forever. Maybe your children will not even remember what Earth looked like. Maybe they will not even know they came from somewhere at all. She considers this with the same seriousness she brings to everything. I would rather know where I came from, she says finally, even if it is scary. I do not have words for how much that simple sentence, spoken by a 9-year-old who has never seen open sky, steadies something inside me that has been shaking for 10 long years. By the time the last coded message reaches the final hidden colony, 3 months have passed. 17 locations, 40,000 voices, One decision that will shape whether humanity spends the rest of its existence as a ghost story whispered in the dark, or steps forward, however dangerous that step might be, to remind the galaxy that we are still here. The date for the vote is set, and for the first time since I watched my homeworld burn from the window of an evacuation shuttle, I find myself hoping for something other than simply surviving another day. I find myself hoping for a future worth stepping into the light for. The vote begins at what we call the meeting hour, though there is no true hour in deep space. Only the shared agreement of scattered clocks, trying to stay in rhythm across 17 hidden locations. I sit in the communications room of the Last Light, with Dara on one side and Liam on the other, watching a wall of small screens flicker to life one by one, each one showing a different captain, a different elder, a different face, carrying 10 years of the same grief we carry. I recognize some of them from before the silencing, faces softened by time and hardened by loss in equal measure. Others I have never seen, born into leadership after their predecessors died protecting the people who now depend on them. Each screen represents not just one voice, but hundreds, sometimes thousands of lives waiting on the other end of a signal that took months to arrange, and could be intercepted at any moment if we make even one mistake. This channel is secure, Liam says quietly, though I can hear the tension beneath his calm. For now. Dara stands, and the room falls silent, 17 small screens waiting for her to speak. She does not waste time with grand words, she never has. 10 years ago, she begins, we were told we no longer exist. Some of us believed that hiding was the only way to make that lie survivable. I was one of them. I still believe hiding kept us alive long enough to be here today, having this conversation, but I no longer believe it is enough to keep us alive tomorrow. A murmur passes through some of the screens, quiet, uncertain. We are here to decide something together, that none of us should decide alone, she continues. Do we remain hidden and hope that silence protects the next generation the way it protected us? Or do we tell the galaxy the truth, that humanity survived, and accept whatever comes because of that truth? One of the older faces on the screen leans forward. I recognize him now, an elder named Aldrich Monroe, a man who lost both his sons in the silencing and has spent the last decade guiding a hidden colony of survivors through sheer stubborn will. You ask us to risk everything we have left, he says, his voice rough with age and grief. We are not soldiers, Dara. We are farmers, engineers, teachers, children. If we reveal ourselves and the coalition decides to finish what they started, there will be no second chance for any of us. I know, Dara says simply. I am not pretending this is without danger. A younger woman speaks next, her voice sharp with barely restrained anger. Her name appears beneath her image, as Wren Callahan, captain of a small colony hidden inside a hollowed asteroid 3 systems away. My people have spent 10 years teaching our children to whisper, she says. 10 years teaching them that laughter carries too far, that lights draw attention, that existing too loudly is dangerous. You are asking me to undo that teaching in a single moment, and hope it does not get us all killed. I am not asking you to undo it carelessly, Dara replies. I am asking whether we are willing to keep paying that price forever, or whether there is a point where the price becomes too high. I watch the exchange continue for what feels like hours, voice after voice weighing in, some furious, some frightened, some quietly hopeful, in a way that surprises me. I say little during this part, letting the weight of the conversation settle where it belongs, among the people who have carried it the longest. But eventually, Aldrich turns his gaze toward me, and I realize he remembers me, or perhaps remembers my father, who served beside him once, long before either of our lives became defined by hiding. Cale Farrow, he says, your father spoke often about what it meant to be human, back before the world ended. I imagine you have thoughts on this as well. I feel every eye on the screens shift toward me, and for a moment, my throat tightens around every practiced word I might have prepared. Instead, I let myself speak plainly, the way my father used to. I have a daughter, I say. She is 9 years old. She has never seen the sun rise over open ground. She has never heard rain fall on a real roof. She has grown up believing that Earth is a story her parents tell her before sleep, not a place she comes from. And a few weeks ago, she told me that she would rather know the truth of who we are, even if it is dangerous, then keep living safely inside a lie. The room is silent. I am not saying this because I am not afraid, I continue. I am terrified, but I have spent 10 years protecting my daughter by teaching her to disappear, and I am starting to understand that disappearing forever is not protection. It is just a slower kind of loss. Ren Callahan studies me through her screen, her expression unreadable for a long moment, before something in it softens slightly. And if this ends badly, she says, if this decision leads to another silencing, are you prepared to carry that? No, I admit honestly. I do not think anyone could ever be fully prepared to carry that. But I think I am even less prepared to watch my daughter grow up believing she came from nothing, when the truth is, she came from a species that once looked at the stars and decided to reach for them anyway, no matter the danger. Another long silence follows, heavier this time, filled not with anger but with thought. One by one, the remaining voices speak. Some argue for continued caution, insisting that survival, however small and hidden, is still survival, and that hope should never be gambled against certainty. Others argue that a life spent entirely in hiding is not truly living at all, merely delaying an ending that will come regardless, only quieter and more forgotten. I listen to every argument, and I do not judge any of them as wrong. Fear is not weakness. It is the honest response of people who have already lost everything once and cannot bear the thought of losing what little remains a second time. But beneath the fear, I hear something else building in nearly every voice, something that sounds almost like relief at finally being allowed to say the truth out loud after 10 years of forced silence. We are tired of hiding. The vote itself takes place quietly, each colony casting their decision through a simple, encrypted signal, weighed not just by leadership but by the will of every adult within each community, gathered and counted in the hours before the final transmission. Liam manages the tally personally, his hands steady despite the tension visible in every line of his face. When the final numbers appear on the screen, the room falls utterly silent. Out of 17 colonies, representing nearly 40,000 surviving humans, the vote to reveal our existence to the galaxy passes with a clear, if not overwhelming, majority. Dara exhales slowly, and for the first time since I have known her, I see something close to fear flicker across her face before she carefully sets it aside. Then it is decided, she says, her voice steady despite everything. We do not attack. We do not provoke. We simply tell the truth. We let the galaxy know that the story they have been celebrating for 10 years was always a lie. Aldrich nods slowly from his screen. May whatever gods are still listening have mercy on all of us. Over the following days, preparation replaces debate. Every hidden colony begins the careful work of readying itself, not for war, but for the possibility of consequence. Liam works tirelessly to identify old Earth military communication codes still buried in the last light systems, protocols designed decades ago to override standard broadcast channels in moments of extreme emergency. Protocols that, if used correctly, could allow a single transmission to reach every corner of Coalition territory simultaneously. Dara spends her time coordinating the careful gathering of every remaining human ship capable of flight, calling in favors and old loyalties built across a decade of quiet survival, arranging for them to converge at a single rendezvous point, far from any major Coalition patrol route. And I spend my time preparing something far more personal. Late one night, unable to sleep, I sit in the small cabin I share with Mira, watching her sleep peacefully, unaware that the decision made days ago will shape the entire course of her life. I take out an old datapad, cracked and worn from years of use, and I begin recording a message, not for the galaxy, not yet, but for her, in case something happens to me before this is finished. I tell her about Earth, the real Earth, not the version reduced to rubble in Coalition records, but the Earth I remember from my childhood, before everything ended. I tell her about blue skies and green fields, about the sound of rain on real rooftops, about laughter that did not need to be measured in whispers. I tell her that whatever happens next, she was born from people who chose, even in their darkest moment, to stand rather than disappear. I do not know if she will ever need to hear this message. I hope, more than I have hoped for anything in 10 years, that she never will. But I record it anyway, because hope alone has never been enough to protect the people I love, and I refuse to leave anything to chance, that I still have the power to control. 3 days later, the gathering fleet reaches its rendezvous point, a scattered cluster of ships that would look, to any outside observer, like nothing more than debris drifting through empty space. Up close, however, it is something else entirely. It is humanity, quietly reassembled after 10 years of scattered survival, waiting in the dark for the moment we finally choose to speak. Dara stands on the bridge of the last light, looking out at the small, ragged fleet through the viewport, ships patched together from spare parts and stubborn determination, crewed by people who refuse to let an entire species disappear without one final word. It is not much of an army, Liam says quietly, standing beside her. It was never supposed to be an army, Dara replies. It is a message. I stand nearby, watching the same view, thinking of Mira, asleep in her cabin, of Aldrich's tired, hopeful voice, of Ren Callahan's sharp, protective anger, of 40,000 people who decided together that silence, however safe, was no longer a future worth choosing. Tomorrow, we will do something no human has done in 10 years. Tomorrow, the galaxy that celebrated our extinction is going to hear our voice again, whether they are ready for it or not. And for the first time since I watched my homeworld burn, I do not feel like a survivor hiding in the wreckage of everything I lost. I feel like someone standing at the beginning of something new, however dangerous that beginning might be. The morning of the broadcast, if morning is even a word that means anything out here, I wake before my alarm, my heart already pounding as though my body understood what was coming, before my mind fully caught up. I lie still for a moment, listening to the familiar hum of the last light around me, memorizing the sound the way I have memorized so many things I was afraid to lose. Mira is still asleep in the bunk across from mine, one arm hanging off the edge, her face peaceful in a way I envy. I do not wake her yet. I want her to have a few more minutes of a world that has not yet changed. By the time I reach the bridge, the tension is thick enough to touch. Liam sits hunched over his console, running final diagnostics on the override protocols we have spent months preparing. Dara stands at the center of the bridge, watching the tactical display, where the scattered points of our small fleet hold formation, just beyond the edge of a heavily trafficked coalition communication relay, the largest and most powerful transmission hub in this entire sector of space. Status, Dara says without turning. All ships report ready, Liam replies. Override codes are loaded. The moment we breach the relay's security, we will have a window of roughly 90 seconds before their systems lock us out and trace the intrusion. 90 seconds, I repeat. 90 seconds to say everything that needs to be said, Liam confirms. 90 seconds does not sound like much time to undo 10 years of carefully maintained silence, but I remind myself that some truths do not need long speeches. Sometimes the truth only needs to be spoken clearly, once, for everything to change. Bring us to launch position, Dara orders. The last light moves forward, and for the first time in a decade, I feel the old military discipline of the ship come alive beneath me, every system humming with purpose, rather than simply the effort of staying hidden. Behind us, the rest of the fleet begins to move as well, small ships and large, patched together from scraps and stubborn hope, forming a loose formation that, from a distance, might almost look like something powerful. It is not powerful. Not in any way the coalition would recognize as a threat, but it is unmistakably, undeniably human, and after 10 years of being told we were gone, that alone feels like the most dangerous thing we could possibly show them. Coalition patrol detected, Liam says suddenly, his voice sharpening. 2 cruisers, moving toward the relay station. They have not spotted us yet, but if we do not move now, that window is going to close. Dara does not hesitate. Liam, begin the override. Liam's hands fly across his console, and I watch on the display as our ship's systems reach out toward the massive coalition relay station, slipping past outer defenses using codes and protocols, so old that most modern coalition engineers likely do not even know they exist, remnants of a time when humanity still had a seat at the galactic table, rather than a grave everyone assumed was empty. We are in, Liam says, his voice tight with disbelief, even as his fingers keep moving. 60 seconds, until they detect the intrusion. Patch me through, I say, stepping forward. Dara glances at me, and something passes between us, an unspoken agreement, built over months of preparation, and years of shared survival. She nods. "You have the floor," she says quietly. "Say what needs to be said." My hands are shaking as I step up to the console, but my voice, when it finally comes, is steadier than I expect. "This is Kale Farrow," I begin, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I am aware that this message is now traveling across every channel of the largest communication relay in this sector, reaching ships, colonies, and cities across an enormous stretch of coalition space simultaneously. I am a systems officer aboard a human vessel. 10 years ago, you were told that my species was destroyed. You were told that the silencing was necessary, that humanity was a violent threat, removed for the safety of the galaxy. You have spent a decade celebrating a lie. I pause, just for a breath, thinking of Mira, asleep in her bunk, of Aldrich's tired voice, of Ren's sharp, protective anger, of 40,000 people who chose, together, to stand rather than disappear. We are not gone, I continue. We survived. We hid, because hiding was the only way to protect what remained of us. But we are done hiding. We are not here to threaten anyone. We do not have the strength for war, and honestly, we do not want it. We simply refuse to let a lie define what happened to our species for one more day. 30 seconds, Liam warns quietly, but I keep speaking, my voice growing steadier with every word. To everyone still listening, to every colony that has spent 10 years hiding in the dark corners of this galaxy, believing you were the last of us, believing that speaking meant certain death, you are not alone. We are here. We are still human, and we are done pretending otherwise. I glance at Dara, who gives me a small, firm nod, and I understand that it is time to finish, to leave behind the 2 words that will define this moment for the rest of history, whatever that history turns out to be. We're here, I say, clear and unwavering. Earth's last ship, and every survivor who stood with us, are not gone. We're here. 15 seconds, Liam says. They are locking us out. Send it, Dara orders. The transmission completes just as the relay's security systems finally catch up to what we have done, severing our connection abruptly, but not before the message has already spread far beyond anything they can now contain. On the tactical display, I watch as coalition communication traffic across the entire sector spikes violently. Ships and stations suddenly flooded with a message none of them expected to ever hear again. "It is done," Liam says, his voice barely above a whisper, as though he cannot quite believe what we have just done. For a moment, the bridge is silent, filled only with the low hum of the ship and the distant sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then the tactical display lights up violently as the 2 coalition cruisers, previously moving casually toward the relay station, suddenly change course, weapons systems activating as their sensors finally register our small fleet holding position nearby. "They have spotted us," Liam says, tension flooding back into his voice. Cruisers moving to intercept. "Hold position," Dara orders, her voice calm, despite the danger visibly growing on the screen. "We do not run, not now, not after everything we just said." I feel fear rise in my chest, sharp and immediate, but beneath it, something steadier holds firm, a kind of resolve I have not felt in 10 years of quiet survival. The lead coalition cruiser opens a communication channel, and a voice, cold and clearly shaken, fills the bridge. "Unidentified vessels, you are ordered to power down and prepare to be boarded. Identify yourselves immediately." Dara steps forward, her expression calm, unshaken, carrying the weight of 10 years of hidden survival in every line of her posture. "This is Captain Dara Voss," she says, her voice carrying clearly across the open channel. "Commanding officer of the human vessel Last Light. You already know who we are. You just heard it broadcast across your entire communication network." There is a long pause on the other end, filled with what I imagine must be complete disbelief among the crew of that cruiser. Men and women who woke up this morning believing, like the rest of the galaxy, that humanity had been erased 10 years ago. "That is not possible," the voice finally says, quieter now, less certain. "Your species was eliminated. This is confirmed. This is recorded fact." "Recorded fact can still be a lie," Dara replies evenly. "We are not here to fight you. We are not here to threaten your people. We are simply here to tell the truth that your leadership has spent a decade hiding from the rest of this galaxy." Another long pause follows, filled with the kind of silence that comes from an entire worldview being challenged in real time. "Stand by," the voice finally says, tension audible even through the translation filters. "We are relaying this to command." The channel closes, and the bridge falls into tense, uncertain silence once again. I look at the tactical display, at the two cruisers holding position, rather than immediately opening fire, and I allow myself, cautiously, to hope that this moment might pass, without immediate violence. "What happens now?" I ask quietly. Dara does not answer right away, her eyes fixed on the screen, watching for any sign of what the Coalition intends to do with the truth we have just forced them to confront. "Now," she says finally, "we find out whether the galaxy is ready to admit it was wrong about us." Behind us, across the scattered formation of our small, patched-together fleet, I imagine every remaining human ship holding its breath the same way we are, waiting to see whether this single act of defiance will be met with renewed violence, or whether, after 10 years of silence, something entirely different might finally be possible. I think of Mira, likely awake by now, wondering why the ship feels different this morning, unaware that the entire galaxy just learned her people never truly disappeared at all. Whatever happens next, I know one thing with absolute certainty. We are no longer hiding. We are no longer a memory, a lie, or a story told before sleep. We are here, and for the first time in 10 long years, the galaxy is finally being forced to listen. The silence after the Coalition cruiser closes its channel stretches longer than any silence I have known in 10 years of hiding. I stand on the bridge of the last light, watching the two enemy ships hold their position, weapons armed but not firing, and I understand that we are all suspended in a single fragile moment where everything could still go either way. "They are not retreating," Liam says quietly, "but they are not advancing either." "They are waiting for orders," Dara replies. "Whoever is in command up their chain has no idea what to do with a truth this large." Minutes pass like hours. I keep glancing at the tactical display, watching for any sign of reinforcements converging on our position, half expecting to see an entire fleet arrive to finish what the silencing started 10 years ago. Instead, something stranger happens. Coalition communication traffic across the sector, already flooded from our broadcast, begins to shift in tone, no longer simply confused, but increasingly fractured, as different voices across different worlds begin reacting to the truth in wildly different ways. Liam pulls up a secondary display, monitoring public Coalition channels now buzzing with reaction to our message. Some of them are calling it propaganda, he reports. Others are demanding an official response from Coalition leadership. And some, he pauses, clearly surprised. Some of them sound almost relieved. Relieved, I repeat. There are species out there who never fully trusted the official story, Dara says quietly. Species who lost their own people to Coalition decisions made in the name of safety. Hearing that humanity survived despite everything might mean something different to them than it does to the ones who ordered the silencing. Before I can respond, the channel to the lead Coalition cruiser reopens, and a different voice speaks this time, older, more measured, carrying an authority the first voice lacked. "Human vessel," the voice says. "This is Fleet Commander Threll Osei, of the Coalition Oversight Division. I have reviewed your transmission. Command is divided on how to proceed." Dara steps forward again, her posture steady, despite the uncertainty hanging over the entire bridge. "Then let me make this simple for you," she says. "We are not here to fight. We never wanted a war 10 years ago, and we do not want one now. We only want the truth acknowledged. What happens after that is not something we can control, and honestly, it is not something we came here expecting to control." There is a long pause before Commander Osei responds. "You understand that many within the Coalition will see your survival as a threat that must be corrected." "I understand that some will," Dara says. "I also understand that some will see it as a mistake worth correcting, in an entirely different way." Another pause, longer this time. "I cannot promise you safety," Osei finally says. "I can only promise that I will not be the one to fire the first shot today, and I will carry your message to those above me, exactly as you delivered it." The channel closes once more, and the two cruisers, after a tense moment, slowly withdraw from intercept range, retreating toward the relay station, rather than pressing forward into open conflict. I feel the breath I did not realize I was holding finally leave my chest. They are not attacking, Liam says, disbelief coloring every word. Not today, Dara replies carefully. That does not mean this is over. She is right, of course. Over the following days, the galaxy does not simply accept the truth quietly. Some coalition factions demand immediate military action, insisting that humanity's survival proves we were always more dangerous and deceptive than originally believed, since we managed to hide an entire fleet for a full decade without detection. Fear, I learn quickly, does not disappear simply because a lie is exposed. Sometimes it grows louder, searching for new justification to survive. But not every reaction is one of fear. Within a week, we receive contact from 3 separate alien delegations, none of them affiliated with the Coalition's ruling powers, each one reaching out cautiously, curious rather than hostile, asking questions about who we are, how we survived, and what kind of future we might imagine now that the truth has finally been spoken aloud. Some of them, I learn, lost worlds of their own to Coalition decisions made in the name of galactic safety, and our survival becomes, for them, a quiet kind of proof that resistance to that narrative is possible. Dara handles most of these early conversations personally, careful and measured, unwilling to promise alliances she cannot guarantee, but equally unwilling to reject connection out of old fear alone. I watch her grow, day by day, from a woman who spent a decade hiding her people in the shadows, into something closer to a leader, stepping cautiously into a far larger, far more complicated galaxy than the one we lost. Meanwhile, across the scattered human colonies, reaction to our broadcast ripples outward in ways I could not have predicted. Some communities, emboldened by the truth finally being spoken, begin cautiously reducing the strictest of their hiding protocols, allowing children to play a little louder, allowing lights to burn a little brighter, in places once kept carefully dark. Others remain fearful, unwilling to trust that exposure will not eventually lead to renewed violence, and I do not blame them for that caution. Old fear does not vanish overnight simply because a single message was sent into the void. I think often, during these tense, uncertain days, of Mira, and of the conversation we had in the cargo bay months earlier, when she told me she would rather know the truth, even if it was dangerous, than keep living safely inside a lie. I find her one evening sitting near the observation window, watching the stars in a way that has become a quiet ritual for her since childhood. Everyone is talking about us now, she says without looking away from the window. Liam showed me some of the messages coming in. Some of them are angry, some of them are not. That is how truth works sometimes, I tell her, sitting down beside her. It does not make everyone happy. It just makes things real again. She considers this for a long moment. Was it scary, sending the message? Terrifying, I admit honestly. But you did it anyway. We did it together, I say. All of us. Because staying quiet forever was scarier than the risk of speaking. She is quiet for a while, then finally asks the question I suspect she has been holding on to since the broadcast first went out. Do you think we will ever get to see Earth again? Not just in stories. For real. I do not have a certain answer for her, not yet. Not with everything still so uncertain across the galaxy. But I think of the alien delegations reaching out cautiously. Of coalition factions, divided rather than united in aggression. Of 40,000 survivors, no longer required to disappear a little more with each passing year. I think, I say slowly, that for the first time in 10 years, that question actually has a real chance of becoming true someday. Not tomorrow, maybe not even soon. But it is possible now, in a way it was not before we spoke. She smiles at that, small and hopeful. The kind of smile that makes every risk we took feel worth the uncertainty still ahead of us. Weeks pass, and slowly, cautiously, something resembling a fragile peace begins to take shape. The coalition's ruling powers, divided internally over how to respond, ultimately choose restraint over renewed aggression, unwilling to risk further fracturing their own alliance by pursuing open conflict against a species now openly supported by several sympathetic factions. It is not full acceptance. It is not forgiveness for the silencing, but it is, for the first time in a decade, the absence of active extermination, and after everything we have survived, that absence feels like the beginning of something we had almost forgotten how to imagine. One evening, months after the broadcast that changed everything, Dara gathers the crew on the bridge to share news that has just come through secure coalition channels. negotiated carefully through the alien delegations, who first reached out to us in curiosity, rather than hostility. They are permitting a survey mission, she says. A single, unarmed vessel is being allowed to travel to Earth's system to assess the current state of the planet, under careful, monitored conditions. The room falls silent, filled with a kind of disbelief too large for words. After everything, Liam finally says, after everything they did, they are letting us go home. Not home yet, Dara clarifies carefully. Not fully. This is a survey mission, nothing more, and it comes with enormous risk still attached. But it is a door that was completely closed just months ago, and now, cautiously, carefully, it is opening. I feel something shift deep inside my chest, something I have not allowed myself to feel in 10 long years of survival, something dangerously close to hope, in its purest, least guarded form. I volunteer for the mission almost before Dara finishes speaking, and to my surprise, she grants my request without hesitation, understanding perhaps better than anyone the weight of what it would mean for me personally to be among the first humans to see our homeworld again, after everything we have endured. Mira insists on coming with me, and though the decision terrifies me, I ultimately agree, because I remember what she told me months ago in the cargo bay, about wanting to know the truth even if it is dangerous, and I refuse to be the one who denies her that truth, now that the chance finally exists. The journey to Earth's system takes several tense weeks, filled with careful monitoring from distant coalition observers, ensuring we honor the fragile terms of the survey agreement. I spend much of that journey standing at the viewport beside Mira, watching the stars slowly shift as we draw closer to a place I have not seen since I was 19 years old, watching my entire world burn from the window of an evacuation shuttle. When Earth finally appears on the main display, small and distant at first, then gradually growing larger as we approach, I find myself unable to speak, my throat tight with a decade of grief and hope tangled together into something too large for words. The planet is scarred, undeniably marked by the violence inflicted upon it 10 years ago, entire regions still bearing the visible wounds of the silencing. But beneath those scars, life persists. Green still grows in scattered patches across the surface. Oceans still move beneath the pull of a moon that never stopped turning, regardless of what happened to the people who once called this place home. Mira stands beside me, silent, her eyes wide, with something I recognize instantly, because I remember feeling it myself as a child, long before the world ended. Wonder. It is real, she whispers. It was never just a story. No, I say softly, my own voice thick with emotion I no longer bother hiding. It was always real. We just had to survive long enough to prove it. We stand together at the viewport for a long time, watching our scarred, beautiful homeworld grow larger with every passing moment. A planet the galaxy declared dead 10 years ago, now slowly, cautiously, being seen again by the very people it was supposedly emptied of forever. I think of everyone who made this moment possible, of Dara's steady leadership through a decade of impossible choices, of Liam's tireless work keeping our fragile hope alive through wires and code, of Aldrich and Wren and every other voice that dared to vote for truth over safety, of 40,000 survivors scattered across the galaxy who refused to let silence become their final legacy. They announced humanity was dead. They celebrated our extinction with toasts and speeches, confident that silence meant surrender, confident that hiding meant we had already been erased. But dead things do not send messages into the dark. Dead things do not gather scattered ships into fragile formations and speak truth into the heart of an empire built on the lie of their disappearance. And dead things certainly do not come home. As the last light continues its slow, careful approach toward the world I once thought I would never see again, I hold my daughter's hand and watch Earth grow brighter on the horizon, a planet no longer defined by the silence that followed its supposed death, but by the simple, unbreakable truth that finally forced the galaxy to listen. We're here. We were always here, and we are not going anywhere ever again.